Alex did a great job. And we can start class. And this should be recording. Yeah, awesome. So the only thing I got to do is figure out how to position that camera so that it can see me and the speakers better, but not bad to start with. Okay, so where was I when Alex chimed in again? I think I was just saying that I'm on the phone with Alex, right? Okay. So first of all, I got a couple announcements that I want to make sure I don't forget. And let me move everything over here and get accustomed to standing here so that maybe I'm on the screen. So
Is that wireless?
what's that? The camera?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Unfortunately, it's not. It's a USB cable that's plugged in. Okay, so announcements. First of all, you may have noticed that I sent an email at 2 something in the morning last night, letting you know that I finished the markups on all of your LinkedIn profiles. You may have also noticed that I didn't send the rest of my markups on your internal analysis tools. I had to make a choice of which thing I'm going to get done, and I chose important over urgent this weekend because otherwise, there's always a reason to postpone getting those markups done on the LinkedIn profiles. So I have I have markups for the rest of the draft 3s, as well as all the draft 4s, and any sort of straggler comments that I need to make on draft 1 or 2. That's all scheduled on my calendar for tomorrow. So I should be up to date with markups in your case papers. Hopefully I'll be able to send the markups for the earlier ones before class on Wednesday. If not, then as soon as I'll send everything at once this coming weekend, but hopefully I'll have the back markups done tomorrow, and then I'll mark up some of the financial analysis tools from some of you and go over those in class like I normally do on Wednesday. And then the rest of the markups for the financial analysis tools I'll do over the weekend. Sound good? Okay. That's that. And then I did not send markups on your professional development plans yet. I wanted to get the LinkedIn stuff. I got on a roll with LinkedIn, so I just kept going and got all those done first. That's scheduled for this weekend. So hopefully, as my plan was originally, by the beginning of November, I would be done with everything, get it back to you. That is still the timeline. You just already have all your LinkedIn markups now, and I will get back to you with my next steps for what I want you to do with your professional development plans this coming weekend. Make sense? Okay. And that's that. I mentioned earlier that if you're going to graduate in fall semester of 2016, you actually need to apply for graduation by the end of this week, which seems insane to me, the amount of lead time there. That's over a year ahead of time. But I think it has to do with our semester conversion. So if anybody in here is not graduating now and is planning instead on graduating fall semester after we convert to semesters, basically check with your academic advisor over in our academic advising center. Email them, call them, just make sure that anything you needed to do by the 30th, you've done. I checked with our admin person, and the date was correct. She didn't mean 2015, she meant 2016. And I think the reason that it's so far in advance is because of the semester conversion. So anybody in here that might apply to, I just wanted to make sure to remind you. Okay? And then I have 2 things. No, one more thing. This is a reminder to myself. Try to ask students more questions, do less talking. I'm going to do my best on that. It's kind of a lecture thing today, but I'll do my best on asking you guys questions instead of just me talking. So that's all that. We've got three things to go over in our agenda today. First thing is the Globus Year 9 results. Second thing is some tips for you guys on how to fill out the strategic plan this weekend. That's also due along with your decision entries the end of this weekend. It's not very time intensive. You just need to choose the right number. So I'll show you how to fill it out in a second here, and I'll show you what to think about when you do fill it out. And then we'll go over the lecture on kind of bringing things all together and doing the summary section of the case analysis paper. And then that's it for today. And basically, that's it for the lectures, too. We'll talk about Globus again a little bit next week, but really, I'll go over on Monday instead of Wednesday. So Monday next week, I'll go over my comments on some of your summary sections, just like I do every week on the drafts. And then on Wednesday of next week, we're going to have a really fun test that has nothing to do with your grade in this class, but is for us to measure how we're doing as a college in what you've learned from the time you started to the time you end. And I asked, a couple of you mentioned to me that you just took 290 last quarter, so there may not be very much improvement. It's a bureaucratic thing. I told our department chair about that. She said, yeah, that's unfortunately because of the way everything's scheduled right now, that's happening. We're trying to fix it in the future so that there's more distance between the tests, but we have to there's a like certifying body called the AACSB, American Association of Schools. That's AACSB. College Schools of Business, I believe. It's basically the official organization that certifies all business schools in the world, and certainly in the United States, actually. They do some certifications overseas, but it is the American Association of. We shouldn't think that we know how to certify the rest of the world. It's actually an American organization. But anyway, we have to show them that we're doing something to measure how you're improving. So we have to show them that we administered the test. I understand that there may not be much change since last quarter, but it's something we have to show that we did, okay? So that'll be next Wednesday. It won't be the whole class session. I think it takes about 75 or 90 minutes, something like that. So, I've got eight different guest speakers that I lined up for you guys, and I'm not sure who's available when yet. I've only got 2 actually confirmed for dates. Danira, the audit director for Barbara Cooper King, is going to be here, I believe, on the 9th, was it? And then on the 4th.
That one was on the 2nd.
Was it? Is she on the 2nd?
One of them was.
One of them's on the 2nd, and one of them I thought was on the 9th. So we've got Kent Stenderup coming in basically next Monday, I believe that's right, the 2nd. And then a week from then, Danira will be here. I don't know about the rest of the speakers yet, but we got a lot of them. So wherever I can fit them in, we may end up having a speaker on next Wednesday and then the test, or the test and then a speaker. It just depends on when they're available. Now that I have all your guys' questions later today, I'm forwarding those to all the speakers and trying to pin down exact dates for everybody that I don't have a date for yet. Okay? So that's that on guest speakers and sort of next steps. Does that make sense? Any questions? In the interest of asking you guys more questions, Maria, how's the week going so far? Yeah? Any concerns about Globus? Which group letter are you guys?
G.
G? So you're okay. You're kind of in the middle. Not the top, but, above 100% of investor expectations. All good. Case going okay? Cool. Okay. That was a little more question asking, wasn't it? Okay, so Globus. Let's pull up the Globus website. and go down here. As I was saying to Richard, I think, basically, the performance this week is worse than it was last week in general. The biggest reason for that, and I'm not really giving away anything here because it's publicly available information in the reports, but Group D like knocked the ball out of the park, and they made a pretty big change with their pricing position. So that has pulled the average prices in the whole industry down. And there, you'll see if we go in. If I start with Group J and giving people input, which one's J? I always forget who's who. Okay, so if I give you guys you lost money on every camera last year. Do you know what happened? Do you want some tips?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me open this up. So the first thing I always do is go to the statistical review, or I try to, if it'll open. There, and go down to production benchmarks, and I always try to start looking at where do you guys stand compared to the rest of the market. So you're a little above average on your core components costs, but you're below average on brand specific components and a little bit below average on special utility features. So initially, is that your laptop? Is it okay? Okay, good. If based on that, you guys should be just slightly below average on your price, based on that. And then in multi-featured, you're above average on your brand-specific components. I need one of those little like laser pointer things. But you're below average. You're above average on core components, but brand-specific and special utility features are low. So on average, I'd say that you want to be slightly below the industry average for multi-feature as well, based on what your features are right now. Okay, so that's the first thing I always try and go look at. Now, bringing in Group D and what's happened in the market, like if we look at the quarterly snapshot, and you look here, first of all, at the average price in the market. So the average price is 163. You guys are 165 in North America, so you're a little high, but the impact of being high with the fact that you're on the low side of the middle of the market. So being high is bad at price. Being a little low is better for demand. But because Company D is selling at 106, like nobody, they're like $50 lower than anybody else in the market. So even if you're basically where you need to be with your price, like nobody wants to buy your camera because there's an extremely cheap one on the market right now. So you need to do one of two things. You need to either like move towards Group D with your both price and features, or you need to move your features up a little bit so you have a more attractive camera, because people are willing to pay for quality, and then you can still charge towards the average of the market. So you need to do one or the other of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Marissa, you look like puzzled.
I don't know, we just thought we were sticking with the average the whole time.
You say again?
We thought we were just sticking with the average the whole time.
Well, you did. I mean,
we started at second and now we're like last.
yeah, because basically the rest of the teams, I haven't gone in and looked. Like, how much time do you guys invest on changing your decisions each week? Minutes? Group D, how much did you put in last week to change everything?
Like, we just split it up into like 2 days. Like, we were constantly like changing and figuring out what would be the best.
So if I look, actually I can go back and I can see activity logs. So Jay, like I don't like grade you on this, but it's revealing. So last week, what? 4 minutes? Is that right? No, that's last week is year 9. So half an hour. Nelly, you put a good deal of time in on this last week, huh? Doesn't seem to have helped too much. And Marissa, you put in about an hour. So yeah, I mean that that's relatively significant amount of time. Let's look at D. Were you guys logged in under Dahi basically?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like from the logins that like Nelly and Marissa were logged in at 2 different times. Were you guys all together, or did you split up the work between the 2 of you? So you're sitting together, just logged in under one person. So if we add it up, that's about 2.5, 3 hours you guys put in, and they put in 6. So basically, the more time you spend tweaking everything, that's the reason you've dropped down. Basically, is because other teams are putting more time in to think, oh look, if we change this, we get like more sales, or if we lower this, if we raise this price or we lower this, we're gonna like. It's just a question of going in and changing things. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just that the rest of the teams, the level of competition has risen. So if you want to continue to like, if you want to continue to like be in the middle or the top of the game, you have to like go in and spend some more time figuring out how to change things. So I'll start by giving some tips right now, but does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah.
Not to your satisfaction?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So go out of that and back to the decision entries. So that's kind of what I noticed first of all. Like because there's a group that's so low on their price and features here, you need to either go down lower on your price and your features, or you need to go up on your features in order to maintain the same price. Or you may have to do both. But if you go in, for example, and if we try staying where you're at, I went in a little bit and looked at things. And if you look at the rest of the groups that are like close to you in the marketplace, so if you look at the rest of the groups that are kind of average in their price, so Group B, Group C, Group E. Basically, I went in and looked a little bit, and this is like, there's actually no way that you'd be able to see this necessarily, but proprietarily, I know that the combination of features you have is not really in your interest right now. So I went in and played with some things, and like the same advice goes for everybody in here. Like not the same exact changes, but in general, when things aren't working, you like each of these features is slightly different. So largely, you're a little bit above average here, but you're way below average in what you're like offering in brand specific components.
Yeah, that makes sense because we never touched those. We only
Yeah.
touched the core components.
Well,
And we never really looked into the brand.
In general, this underlines my point. Like everything in here that's blue is blue for a reason, and one of the like it's a good thing. We actually have so many groups like doing well and investing time in the game that smaller nuances are starting to make a difference. You know, in other classes that I've had, like the problems were so large that like by the end of the game we just fixed the basic problems. You don't have any basic problems. You're basically positioned right, but compared to the competition, it's not very attractive anymore. So I would actually try raising these because everybody else basically that's in the same position as you is higher. Like group D is lower. I mean, they pretty much brought everything down to go for a low cost and low price position. You could try to do that, but I would actually suggest that you try going up instead. And maybe move up your special utility features too.
It said that our earnings per share was like negative now. Is that gonna affect our earnings per share going up in those?
What's that?
Going up in the brand specific components?
What? Eventually, Marissa, it will help. Like, but only after we make all the changes. So basically, what this does is raises your cost per camera to produce, but it also raises the quality of the camera. So all things being basically, in effect, Group D is selling like, what's that phone you can buy at like Walmart that, huh? Like a Go, yeah, they're selling Go phones basically, and they're super cheap. They got a distribution deal with Walmart. Like they're selling them like this, you know, but you know, you could basically use, they're almost disposable. You could use it for 2 weeks and throw it out because it's going to have problems. So if somebody wants like a real camera, they'll buy yours instead of Group D's. But there's a lot of people out there that want to buy like a cheap camera, so they've got a good position in the market. But you know, they got there first, so you may not want to go do exactly the same thing as them because they're already ahead of you. But if you do this, it's going to raise your cost, but it's also going to raise your demand. And you have to go in and like change the rest of the numbers and see what kind of difference it makes before you can decide whether it's the right thing to do or not. That's why it takes 6 hours, because after you make this change, you have to go in and like do a few changes like with your customer service. Basically, if you have a higher quality camera, customer service investment doesn't need to be quite as high. But this puts you more in the middle of the market. So in order to stand out, you need to invest more in advertising, and like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Make sense? So you won't know if this helped or not until you make all the rest of the changes. Does that make sense? Okay. So if we make that change and then go to marketing, before we make any marketing changes, we need to make sure to change the prediction levels. So again, if you go into the quarterly snapshot and you go back to prior years, you can see like price average in North America is 163 for entry level, 392 for multi-featured. In year 8, it was 169 and 414. So basically, more than anything else, because Group D went with that low cost position, the whole pricing in the marketplace has dropped. Like it's gotten lower. The only and if you go through this, you'll see the prices have dropped. The prices have dropped for entry level in 3 of the 4 markets. The only one there that's not the case is Latin America, because if you remember, there was so much inflation in Latin America last year, so everybody had higher prices there to offset the lower value of the Brazilian real. But now, like all the other 3 markets, entry level is going down. Multi-feature, it went down in North America, but it's pretty much stayed the same in the other markets. Like multi-featured price has not dropped as much. So if we're going to make our predictions accurate, and then basically another thing, more than anything, because I mentioned it in class for my comments last week, like if you change the number of promotions or the amount of your discount or whatever, if everything else is pretty much the same, your price is the same, you've got the same level of features, you've got the same warranty, then making changes in your promotions makes a huge competitive difference. If your price isn't in the right place, it's not going to make any difference to change your promotions. But once everything else is sort of in line, it makes a big difference to change these. So like I said, you're really where you need to be with price and quality, but because the rest of the market has gotten more competitive, yeah, I mean, basically, you're sort of like the there used to be a car brand called Mercury, you know, and like it was the cool brand in the 70s, and they didn't really do anything to like change the brand and keep it current. And there's no more Mercuries on the market now because nobody wanted to buy a Mercury. So it was great in the 70s, and it was still a little okay in the 80s. I bought a Mercury Capri actually when I like in the mid 90s. It was a it's a 2-seater like convertible, but that was the last hurrah of Mercury, and they just weren't competitive compared to the rest of the cars in the market. So you're not doing anything wrong. You just need to like move into the 21st century basically and make changes. So anyway, if you go through and look at all of this about the price, about quality, and about the promotional stuff, you'll find that the market is getting more competitive with promotions, advertising, investment, and everything. The price quality level of the cameras is pretty much not changing. It's exactly the same this year as it was last year, which is not surprising because everybody kind of got that right. And then I haven't made any more comments about it in class, so nobody's changed it when they went and did their edits each week. So there hasn't really been any change in the price quality. Price has dropped for entry level, but it's pretty much stayed the same for multi-featured. And it's gotten more competitive, like advertising-wise. So if we want our decisions to be accurate, we need to go in and say that probably entry-level price is going to continue to go down. The price quality rating is not going to change in any way for either of the two, but it's going to continue to get more competitive with advertising and promotions and everything. So we got to change those. That makes it, see what a big difference that made in your predictions? So if everybody continues to drop their prices and like be more competitive with promotions and advertising, you go from 9% return on equity positive to 3% negative. And that's one of the reasons why you lost money last year, is because like it looked good, but then Group D like pulled the rug out from under you basically because they went so low in the price. They did that for everybody in the market because nobody was expecting it. You need to make decisions based on the trend you think that everybody else is going to be taking. Does that make sense? So if I go in and make some changes here and then move on to quickly to the other groups and then to the rest of the stuff so we still get done in a timely manner, you might be able to spend a little bit less on technical support now because you've raised the quality of the camera slightly. So maybe bring this down to 300. And then you're basically right in the middle of the market with your quality and your price now. So you're way low on advertising. So one of the reasons why you're not selling more cameras and your numbers are low is because nobody knows about your camera. Like everybody else is spending about twice as much as you on advertising. So if you want to make a big splash, I would move all these up to like $1 million per quarter. And then even though you moved up your quality, personally, I've been playing with things a little bit. You wouldn't necessarily know this, but because Group D is so low in the market, I actually still think, even though you raised your cost of your camera and you raised the quality, you should still bring down the price a little bit because price is trending down, and nobody wants to pay as much as they used to for a camera because they all know that there's a Go phone out there now. Make sense? So I'd change all of these to maybe the high 150s. So maybe make this 157. And if you look back at the interest, like the exchange rates, Europe is the place that's going to have inflation this year. Brazil's actually going to have some deflation. So we want the price to be lower in Latin America and North America, and we want it to be higher in Europe. And then the middle will be in Asia. So based on that, 157 for North America, and maybe 158. Or we'll go 157 for Latin America too. And then Europe will stay at 160 because we want it to be higher. And Asia we'll put right in the middle. Actually, we'll put it at 158. And then another thing that I noticed, oh, and then multi-featured, you also want to be, we didn't change anything about your multi-featured. We'll leave all that for now. Your price and we're not going to tweak anything with multi-featured, either the price or the quality for now. But you'll notice you guys basically, have you touched these whatsoever the entire game? Yeah. So because I talked about it last week, and actually part of the reason I talked about it last week is because, can you talk? Yeah. I appreciate the fact, I am a big fan of multitasking and communication, but just do it softer so that everybody else can hear me. Cool. I had a really frustrating conversation with the designers of Globus, because I wanted them to, Group D had came up with all these good questions, and I forwarded them to the Globus people, and as they often do, the Globus people said, it depends. Come on, man. We're paying you money for your game, and the students are showing initiative to ask questions, and you're saying figure it out on your own. I thought that's what they're paying us for. So anyway, we went back and forth, and I eventually dragged out of them some details about promotion, and then I was thinking about it so much, and I talked about it in class, and then everybody heard me talk about promotion stuff in class, and a lot of the teams changed their promotions. So basically, because you're otherwise in the middle and not distinguished, you're really hurting here because other teams have changed their promotions. So I would actually also suggest that you go in and change these. You could do more number, or you could do more weeks. Actually, 0 for 4 weeks is still 0. 1 for 4 weeks is different. Or you could do 3 for 1 week. You'll want to go in and play with it and see which ones make a better impact on your numbers. And then you also want to change, you can also change your discount. So if we do 3 for 1 week at 20% as an example.
When you say play with the numbers, are you looking at the little screen to the left?
What? Both. I mean, the screen to the left is important, but you shouldn't trust it until you get done with all the rest. Because everything we're changing here, Marissa, and the same thing goes for everybody else. I'm just using your guys as an example. Everything we're changing here is going to change how many orders you have from the stores, which changes how many workers you need, which changes how much your revenues are. So this only says 30 right now, but I promise you, as soon as, I think, because I played with this before I came in, I don't want to promise because then some small thing was wrong and I looked like I promised, I went back on my promise, but I believe once we make these changes, the demand is going to be way higher here. So as soon as you change your numbers for the demand to send more, you're going to be shipping more cameras because you're more competitive. As soon as you change that, this is going to go way up. So it looks bad right now because you haven't changed the rest of the numbers yet. So yes, you're looking at this when you play with the numbers, but you have to change these things first, make all of the cascading changes, and then see how it is when you finish down here. And then, unfortunately, this is why it takes 6 hours. If it didn't work, then you got to go back up and start over. Okay, that didn't work, so let's change our product features a little bit and make them higher, or we're going to go lower and then change the price and all the way down and see how it works. Does that make sense? Okay, so if I change the rest of these just to show what happens, we'll leave you at 1 year there. I'm not going to change. I'm going to tell you that you could improve the price, the promotions, the warranty period as well for your multi-featured, but I want to make sure that I talk about the strategic plan and the lecture part of the day. So the other groups that are sort of underperforming, Group I think, was next to last. Who's Group I? Okay, so I have some ideas for you. I have some ideas for A. I think you were like third to last. And then Group E. Who's Group E? You guys, yeah. So I've got some. We're going to run out of time. But if you want to come up to me after class or come to my office hours or talk to me on Wednesday, I can give you some tips too. But I want to make sure that we get the rest of the stuff done in class. Okay, so it's similar. The stuff that I'm telling Group J is relevant for everybody else too. It's a little bit different for each group. So Group F, you moved up. Congratulations, you moved up 5 points. You're still like 90% of investor expectations, but you're moving in the right direction. So I'm happy to give more tips to all the rest of the groups. What I'm telling them about being more competitive with promotions, the fact that price is more sensitive in the market now because of the move that Group D made, all of that is relevant to the problems the rest of the groups are having too. Okay, there's different things for each one. I think if I remember correctly, Group I, you actually have some increased demand with stores in a couple of the markets, so like that's going to help you out a bit. You actually had a relatively attractive camera, so there's more stores that want you need to change that, which is going to raise your amount of units you can ship. But anyway, I'm not going to do tips in class for everybody else because we're going to run out of time. But if you have questions for me, just let me know. And then you guys could also make changes here, but I'm not going to do it right now. So I think we're good on all the changes we wanted to make here. So now let's go down to entry-level assembly. And unfortunately, numbers still aren't very good. I thought they'd be better. So multi-featured, we need to change that eventually too, but it's not going to make any difference because we didn't make any changes yet. Compensation and labor. Here is one of the biggest issues. Like, you need 68 PATs to produce the number of units that you're producing. You have 164. So basically you have a little less than 100 workers, actually a little less than 400 workers because there's 4 actual workers per PAT. You have 400 people sitting around playing cards, having long lunch breaks, having a smoke out back. They're not doing anything because you're employing 100 more people than you need. So one of the reasons your numbers are so bad is because you're paying a bunch of people who don't actually do anything. Okay, so if you subtract 94 workers, and then we hire 4 here and hire 77 here, and then subtract 77 here. Max these out, but it's not going to make a difference until, make sure to change these numbers, but it's not going to make a difference until the numbers actually run. These numbers are largely okay. And then actually your finances aren't that bad. You're just not selling very much. So unfortunately, we got you into the positives, but not by very much. So I would go back and start all over again. Maybe make the prices even lower or change these promotions so it's 1 for 3 weeks and just make all the changes all the way down and see what happens. I can tell you that, I sat there for about half an hour in my office before coming here and played with all the numbers, and I got you guys up to 27%. And with the appropriate changes here, the predictions were accurate. And I think I got it up to 350 on your earnings per share and 27% on ROE. Now, obviously, because everyone else in this room is listening, they may make changes as well. So it may not be as good as it looks. But if you make the kinds of changes that I'm talking about, eventually that's the problem right now, is that you need to change your features a bit. The price in the market in general is lower because of what Group D did. You got to be more competitive with your promotions, and then you got to make those same changes for multi-feature. I think and then this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to move on so that we get done on time. I think, if I remember correctly, what I did was I lowered your price even more because it's even though technically the average is here in the market, there's basically one team that's selling at $50 less than everybody else, and then everybody else. So even if you move your price like down like $5 below the industry average, like no one cares because they're so low. So you need to go like 10, 15 below. Basically, because Group D took the lead in dropping price, I imagine there's going to be a huge like price war next year because everybody else has to react to that. Either that, or you need to move your features way up and charge for it. You know, it'll kind of be like Democrats becoming more liberal and like Republicans becoming more conservative, and the whole market becoming more partisan. You know, you instead of having a bunch in the middle, the groups in the middle are not going to be as competitive. So you either have to be like extremely on the high side, so really high features and really high price, or really low features, really low price. And then once that shakes out, the game will probably be over because we only got 3 rounds left. But eventually, then there would be an opportunity in the middle again because everybody kind of crowded the ends, and it changes each week because of the position that people take. Is that? You're nodding. Do you have any concerns that I didn't address? Okay. If someone else comes up, email me, come to my office hours, whatever. Okay. Okay. So next, you want me to save those changes or not?
Yeah.
Okay. I promise you they can get better. I think you need to drop price even more, but I can't remember. Just keep going in and changing things until you get it to look better. And you know, most important is obviously that you start at the top, and every time you change something at the top, you got to go back and change everything that cascades down. Okay, so if I go into, I want to access a corporate lobby. So who wants to volunteer for me to like use your lobby view to show you about the strategic plan? Don't everybody like raise your hand at once. Okay, Jacqueline, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. So you are
H.
Okay. So this is what your screen looks like, right? So for assignments, 3-year strategic plan, this is where you have all the instructions about how the strategic plan works. Okay? It's like, if you put it in a Word document, it ends up being about 3 pages. I copied and pasted all of this onto a Word document that's on Blackboard as well, but you don't have to go to Blackboard to download that. It's right here as well. So all the instructions are here. I will summarize this basically by saying that I gotta find the right place to put the camera so that I can actually see me. I want to see you guys too, but unfortunately the cable's not long enough to like put it over there so it gets the whole room. And if I keep walking here, then I'm standing in front of the screen and you can't see the screen. So let's see how this works. It's an experiment. I don't really care what the video of me is for this class session, but in general, going forward, like when we have guest speakers and just in general, like to get the full reproduction of the lecture, I wanted to get video of me talking too instead of just my voice. But it's an experiment today. So anyway, if I summarize all this, basically everything about your strategic plan decisions is based on how you do compared to investor expectations. And the best way to decide, so you can read all of this, it'll tell you exact details, especially important. Basically, if you're if you're below investor expectations, the safe bet is to set a goal which is below investor expectations and then hit it. Then you get at least 14 points for each of the 5 areas. So basically, you can't shoot for a an earnings of less than $1 a share. You can't shoot for return on investment less than 10%. You can't shoot for less than a $20 stock price. Basically, and I believe you can't shoot for any less than a B- image rating and not here. No, except now. Yeah, credit rating of crap. That's 60. I don't know if there's any minimum on the credit rating and the image rating, but you can't target any lower than $1 a share, $10 return on equity, and $20 stock price. So basically, you can't say, okay, we make our goal 0. And then we made this goal of 0, so cool, we get 14 points. Like, you have to at least have something halfway decent. So those are the rock bottom numbers that you can make as your goal. Okay? And basically, the whole strategic plan is about saying, this is what we want to achieve in year 10. This is what we want to achieve in year 11. This is what we want to achieve in year 12. So the last 3 years of the game, you're going to set what your goal is. If you meet that target, you get this number of points. If you go over the target, you don't get any more points. So like setting a low target and then exceeding it doesn't earn you extra points. But if you set this goal and you don't get there, you get the if you set your goal of a $20 stock price and you actually only made $15, 15 is 75% of 20, so you get 75% of 14 points. Does that make sense? So if you set a goal too high and you don't make it, you get only a percentage of the points based on how low you were below the goal. Does that? Haley should be over there. Maddie, I wanted to call you Haley for some reason. I'm sorry.
That makes sense.
Does it? Okay, cool. So that's the bottom line. If you set your goals equal to investor expectations, and that's 15% earnings per share growth of 8% per year, you can see all here. If you set equal to investor expectations and you make it, you get 16 points. If you set your goals one level higher than investor expectations, basically, so 10% above, and you make it, you get 18 points. If you set your goals 20% above investor expectations and you hit it, you get 19 points. And if you set it 30% above and you hit it, you get 20 points. And that's in each of the 5 areas. So earnings per share, 20 points if you're 30% above the investor expectations. Return on equity, stock price, image rating, and credit rating. So for each of the 5, if you get 30% above what investor expectations were, you'd get 100% on the strategic plan. Anything below that is lower accordingly. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so last thing to show you about figuring out what numbers to set and then where to actually type them in. If you go to decisions and reports, there's 2 places you're going to want to look. So I'm not going to go in here to show what you guys' decision entries were. You'll see 3-year strategic plan. So there's 2 things you're going to want to focus on. The place where you need to type the numbers. So in addition to what you've been doing each week, like clicking on decision entries and going into each of the pages and changing all your decisions, you're also going to need to click here. But the only thing you need to do is performance targets, okay? Everybody, like, listen and pay attention to this so you don't, like, waste time. You do not have to fill out this vision statement. You do not have to do the entry-level camera plan. You do not have to do the multi-featured camera plan. You do not have to do geographic operating projections. None of that. They're like additional features of the game, but I don't use them. The only thing you have to do is go to performance targets and type in what your goals are for each year. Okay? That's all you got to do. So if your earnings per share goal is, $4, and then $4.50 and $5, and your return on equity goal is 17% and 18 and 19. I'm just making up numbers as an example here. And then your stock price goal. What is your stock price right now? Do you guys remember? We can find it in a second, but let's say stock price goal is, 50, 60, 70. Credit rating goal is B plus, A minus, A, and then image rating goal 75, 80, 85. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. That's all you have to do. Once you type those goals in and click save, that's the only thing you have to do for the strategic plan. In order to figure out what goals you want to set, in order to set goals that you can realistically achieve, go to the Globus Statistical Review and look at page 2 and page 3. So page 2, earnings per share, return on equity, stock price, every single one of the groups for each of the years of the game so far, you can see what your performance was here. So basically, you guys are H. So 3 of the 4 years so far, you've been above investor expectations for earnings per share. Okay? Whenever it's in bold, that means you were above. And whatever is in parentheses right here, you see that? That's what the investor expectation goal was for that year. So because if you remember at the beginning of the game, the investors expect you to increase earnings per share each year of the game, like that number doesn't stay the same. It goes up each year. So in order to stay with investor expectations, you have to continue growing as a company. So as of right now, you guys are above average 3 of the 4 years. 10% above 279 would be just about 3, a little over 3. 20% above would be about 320, 330, and 30% above would be 360 maybe. Okay, so if you achieved that 393, you'd be 30% above investor expectations. But everybody else is going to change, so you got to think about whether you think you're going to hit that or not. But basically, this is what 100% is. So actually, that's the new standard is. Sorry, I miscalculated. 30% above in year 9 would have been 360. In year 10, 20% above is 360. To 30% above is 390. So you're just barely at 30% if you maintain that in year 10. And then year 11, year 12. Those are the investor expectation goals. You need to be 30% above that in order to get 100%. Make sense? Yanira, yes.
How many years do we have left? Great, okay.
So this week, next week, week after. That's it. Make sense? Is there like a follow-on to that, or you just wanted to know how many are left? Okay. So that's that. Return on equity. Return on equity. Actually, let me make one change in what I said. So actually, using Group H as the example still, I lied. Like, you don't. That is the case for return on equity. Basically, earnings per share and stock price are different in what the investors expect. Each year, investors expect 15% no matter what. But they actually expect that unless you were already here, which means in order to be 10% above, you need to grow that number by another 8%. Does that make sense? So basically, these numbers up here, like 8% growth on 279 is 304. But for you guys, they expect 8% growth on 393. Okay, so that's 0.039 times 8, 24. So it's basically you got to grow by. Is that right? What is 8% of? What is 8% of 3.93? 10% would be 0.393. Huh? 0.35? That makes sense. So you got to be at 4.35. So 4.2 basically in order to meet investor expectations, and then 20%, like 10% above that would be what you're shooting for, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? Because unfortunately, you're kind of penalized for doing well because your goals have to be even higher. The teams that are below investor expectations just have to hit this number. But if your number is bold here in year 9, then you need to base your goals on the bold number, not on the number at the top. Does that make sense? That is for earnings per share. Return on equity is always 15%. So you're at 23, you're already like 30% above. If you just maintain that 23, you don't have to do anything else. So for you guys, I would clearly set your goal at like 30% above for return on equity. I would think carefully about whether you think you can hit the full goals for earnings per share. It's the same thing for stock price. Like your stock is at 62. So they expect 8% improvement on 62. Okay? So 10% would be 68. So basically they want you to be at 67 here, not 44, because you're already at 62. So they expect you to be 67 here to meet expectations. And then what, 67 plus 10% more would be 73, would be 10% above. Close to 80, 79 would be 20% above, and 86 or so would be 30% above. Does that make sense? If your number in this column is not bold, then these are your goals. Okay? If your number is bold, you have to put it above that. Make sense? Okay. And then finally, credit rating and image. These goals also stay the same. So the investor expectation is always B plus no matter what. You guys are already at A minus. If you expect to maintain A minus, just that basically means A minus is the equivalent of 10% above. So you would be shooting for the 18-point goal here. If you thought you could make it to A, that'd be worth 19, and an A plus rating would be worth 20. Okay, and that you don't have to you can't go to like A plus plus. Like there is no possible way to get better. So that one's always the same. And then same thing here. If you're already above 70, like the goal remains 70. You don't have to improve on. You're at 100% here. You can't improve on 100%. So like your image is out the roof. All you need to do is just maintain that. And you get the full 20 points. And last thing about the strategic plan, and then I'll move on to the lecture portion, if there aren't any more questions. The last thing is 10, 11, 12. We got 3 years in the strategic plan. Basically, the strategic plan will average how you did against your goals in all 3 of those years. And then that average for the 3 years is what you got as your score for the strategic plan at the end of the game. Make sense? Anthony, anything? Burning questions that I'm speaking too much to like let you ask?
No, I like it.
Okay, cool. Richard, any questions? Who haven't I asked? Like some Hyder, anything that clear?
I just understand the idea of it. My point of view is we build a strategic plan for the next 3 years. Why we couldn't build it there from the first year? I mean, if a big company like Sony is in the market and a small company outside, one of them leading the market and the other one is trying to follow. So basically, the first group was leading the game, the last group was following. And why we couldn't build that as a plan at the beginning?
It's a good question. The simple answer is because the people that programmed the game said that the first year that you can start having a strategic plan is in year 9. So the software won't let us do it any earlier. But I agree. Like theoretically, all of the groups, when you take over in the first year of the game, everybody has the same performance. And then because of changes that everybody made, some teams do better, some teams do worse. Theoretically, you could edit the game so that after year 1, like if you did worse, your goals are lower basically. And if you did better, your goals are higher, just like the strategic plan, where we could start it earlier. It's just not a feature that's possible in the game. But it doesn't make any sense to do that in year 1 because all the teams are the same. But we could start in that year 1, year 6. But we could theoretically start that in year 7 already. Richard, I'll get to you in 1 second. As long as if I call Art Thompson and he says yes, yeah, okay, Jeremy, I'll program that, and starting in the winter we could do it. The only reason we can't right now is because it's not an option in the game. But it's a good suggestion. Does that answer your question? Richard?
Does it have any effect on our best expectations?
The strategic plan? No. The strategic plan and your like normal goals for the game, like your performance in the game isn't like if you do well on the strategic plan, it doesn't like make your game performance better. Other than the fact that like the strategic plan is based on your game performance, so the two numbers are correlated, but there's no direct impact between the two. Does that answer your question? Okay. Other questions about Globus before I go on to the summary section lecture? Okay. So, if I go to Blackboard, and scroll down to course documents. This is the one lecture where I don't have any slides that go along with the lecture. The lecture is based completely on the Google sample case analysis. There. Okay, so if I make that, there we go. So what I want basically is one paragraph telling me out of like what I want you to like, okay, here. If we go down to, so over the course of the last 4 weeks, you guys have now filled out a business model tool. You filled out a managerial execution tool. You filled out a corporate responsibility measures tool. You filled out a driving forces tool. You filled out a Porter's 5 forces tool. You filled out a market positioning map, and you did market sizing. You did internal analysis. You did you did the value chain benchmarking. You did leveraging international competitiveness, and you did a financial analysis. Out of all of those tools, what stood out to you as, wow, that's like important for these two companies, or that's a big difference in the future of the industry, or that's a big difference between the two companies? It could be any of these 10 tools. What stood out to you the most? Like, what was like, oh my goodness, that's important, or man, this number is really bad, or this number is really good, or wow, like Wells Fargo does amazing like recruiting when I've never seen like Wells Fargo compared to you're doing JP Morgan Chase, right? Compared to JP Morgan Chase, it's amazing what they do in recruiting. And I've never heard of any other bank that I've ever heard of doing recruiting like that. That's the big thing. Like, I want to know what is the most important thing that struck you over the last 4 weeks. And then you're going to write one paragraph, just one paragraph, no more than that, about what it was and why it's so important. So when I filled out, as an example, when I filled out the Google sample case, the thing that struck me is that Google and Microsoft are in two different businesses. Microsoft sells consumer packaged goods software. Google sells advertising. It's everything else, the current ratios that are so big, and like all of the like innovative things they do with R&D, or the way that they do recruiting of both of those companies have top quality recruiting. They're constantly looking for the smartest, most talented people out there. The driving forces that are so dynamic in the industry, they're all interesting. But the thing that stands out to me, these companies are like, they are mortal enemies, but they're two different industries. Like, that's almost not the case in any of the rest of your analyses. Most of you are looking at companies that are very similar in their business model. But to me, what stood out about this was, wow, like the important thing about this is the future is about eyeballs and advertising. It's not about charging people for a licensed copy of the software. And everything about the future success of these two companies depends on how good they are, how successful they are at being advertising companies. That was my opinion. So that's what I want here. Does that make sense? So Alexis, what would you say so far stands out to you the most about the two law firms you're comparing?
All of the tools, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was maybe the part where you put the scoring, maybe the scoring of the weights.
The value chain benchmarking?
I think, if I remember, I think Cleary had a higher percentage than the Kirkland analysis.
So what stood out to you, like stated differently, perhaps, because basically the two companies need exactly the same things: high quality lawyers. They need good quality advertising and sales. They need basically top quality information systems. You thought that clearly, like one of those two was clearly better than the other one,
Yes.
with their resources. Cool. That's what I want you to put there. Does that make sense? And just give me, you'll notice here that basically I think there's 4 sentences in this paragraph. Does anybody here remember like writing 101, like the way to structure a paragraph from high school or from other classes in college? Hands? So Sam, how does one normally structure a paragraph?
It's easier to write. There's like an intro paragraph, and then fact, comment, fact, comment, and then a closing paragraph.
There's different ways of doing that. That's a little bit more like detailed.
I'm an English major.
No. It's that basically in broad brushstrokes terms. The first sentence should be an intro and an overview about what the rest of the block is about. The last one should tie things up in some way or transition to the next, and everything in the middle should match with the two ends. Okay, so the structure Sam suggested is basically it's a double quarter pounder in effect. You've got the intro sentence as the top bun and the outro sentence as the bottom bun, and then there's two segments in the middle,
It could be 2 to
statement, point, statement, point. Yeah, so basically, if we use Wendy's instead of McDonald's, Wendy's goes up to triples, and I think if you custom order, you can get a quadruple.
Or in and out.
Yeah. So in and out, you can put more or less burgers in the middle. I usually go with the 2 burger format. I basically talk about the issue, it's 2 burgers with cheese. This is the issue. The companies are positioned different. This is how one company is positioned. This is how the other company is positioned, and this is why it's important. Richard.
One company I pointed out, VMware, EMC Corp, being bought by Dell for $67 billion. But I didn't put that. I write about that at all.
You can or not, either way. But if you're going to talk about it here, it should be somewhere in the rest of the paper too. Make sense? Obviously, that's a big deal. But the reason why EMC is being bought by Dell, either A, is because they're not managing the company very well right now, so they're an opportunity for a stronger company to buy them, or B, they have been successful in what they do, and Dell wants access to the products and customer base that they have. So, obviously, the being purchased or merging with another company is usually a sign either that you're having operational difficulties as a company, or both at one at the same time. It means that you can't manage your own business as well as someone else could, and it also means that you have something of value to another company. Anytime there's a merger, it doesn't always work out that way, but anytime there's a merger, that usually means that Dell thinks they can run EMC better than EMC. And they want EMC in the first place because EMC has software and customers of value. So it helps Dell to grow. But if Dell thought that EMC could do it better than Dell, then they wouldn't be taking them over. They probably will leave most things in place, but they're buying it so that it synergizes with the rest of the Dell company and helps the two together will make more money and more profits and more growth than the two separately. Otherwise, there's no reason to merge. Does it make sense? So, but if you're going to mention it here, mention it down in the tools somewhere. Make sense? Other questions about the first part of the summary? Okay, so for the rest then, after you've picked what you think is the most important and you've kind of top bun, couple of burgers, bottom bun, then I want you to go to each of the rest of the tools and tell me a suggestion for one or the other company. So just go back and look at what you put together. So value propositions are different. That leads to some differences in profit model. Basically, they both have heavy R&D investments. They have very different marketing investments here. Basically, Google has to sell advertising to businesses. Microsoft has to sell software to consumers. Microsoft has a bunch of mass consumer marketers. Google has a bunch of key account sales execs that go out and target business customers. So that's a difference. But there's several things in here that you could suggest. So I could suggest Microsoft needs to go out and get themselves a key account sales staff. because they're never going to start signing up advertising customers if they don't if they stick with the consumer marketing staff. Consumer marketing is great, but it's not the same as selling directly to businesses. It's a different kind of skill set. So that could be one change that I suggest. I could also suggest that Google's R&D has resulted in arguably the most impressive piece of software ever built by mankind. They need to continue to do that because it's so important to them being so far in front in the lead. Is because there were plenty of search engines for 20 years before Google, or at least 15, but they didn't work as well as Google. I mean, Google actually finds stuff really well. So you might suggest that they need to keep doing that, but just 2 sentences max, okay? What do you suggest for one or the other companies in each of the tools? So I think as an example here, I think I said that basically Microsoft needs to expand their value proposition. So I didn't actually suggest that they need to hire direct key account sales staff. I could have. When I wrote this up, I said that they need to target a different customer group. And then managerial execution, same thing. Like read through what you got and tell me one suggestion for either of the companies. So in this case, actually, I used to have 8 rows in this table instead of 4. And each quarter I do teach this class, I'm getting, it may seem like the workload is really high for you guys, but I've actually reduced it from like prior classes. And I keep trying to make it more efficient and just focus on the things that are going to like help you present yourself as a professional in the future. So there used to be 8. I reduced this down to 4. One of the things that I took out is actually the thing that I thought was most important when I wrote this up originally. Culture used to be another element here. And basically when I wrote this up, Microsoft has a really strong culture of like, they have a really ingrained culture of the way that they basically like take somebody else's like original idea and do it better. I mean, Microsoft doesn't come up with a lot of original stuff. They just go in afterwards and like afterwards and like carpet bomb the area. Like once somebody else has determined that like word processing is a good idea, Microsoft didn't come up with Word. Like they came up with the software Word, but there were plenty of other word processing programs out there in the like early to mid 80s. Microsoft just made it better. Like they waited for everybody else, like WordPerfect and other software companies to like make mistakes, and then they went in and cleaned up afterwards and made it more efficient. Now, they also programmed all kinds of like bugs and inefficiencies into their own software, but they did it in a way which completely like dominates and locks up the market. So that's what they do. Microsoft like identifies something someone else innovated in, and then they come in and dominate it, and then like continue like servicing that market in a monopolistic kind of way. They have a hard time doing things any differently. Like, but what they need to do now is become a different kind of company. Like they don't need to just improve a software product that Google, they can't. Like they try, and Google's software is not improvable. They tried to do better with Bing, and they're just not really succeeding. What they need to do is not improve the software or improve the distribution of that software to different hardware platforms, which is originally how they got such a dominant position with Windows and their Office products. What they need is actually to sell advertising. They need to change their business model, and they're not good at making radical changes like that. They're good at repeating what has been successful before. So what I wrote is that Microsoft's ingrained culture may impede its ability to shift its value proposition. It will have to find ways to transform its culture. So that's not in the table anymore because I took that out. But what I want you to do is look at the 8 boxes that are in your table and pick one where you think there's a suggestion, the most important suggestion for improvement for one of the other company, and then just say, Alexis, actually, let me use a different example. Marlise, do you remember off the top of your head, like the managerial execution for some of the details of the 2 school districts you're looking at? Like how they do hiring or?
Yeah, the one in Santa Barbara had like more resources, like more different like websites and stuff that they recruited from.
And so you're doing Santa Barbara and I thought so, yeah, Tehachapi. So you might want to say Tehachapi could broaden their net that they're using online to recruit teachers. Like based on the fact that Santa Barbara has such heavy recruiting and they've been successful, it looks like Tehachapi could get more and better quality teachers if they would be more aggressive with their online recruiting, period. Make sense? Does that make sense for everybody else? And then same thing down the rest of the way. Corporate responsibility measures, look at the 3 boxes. Was there one lawsuit that was really bad? Is one company like a lot better than the other one in what they're doing for sustainability? Or does one donate to really cool causes and the other one just not quite as sexy when you like give your annual report and say, hey, like we helped save like 30,000 lives in Africa and another 20,000 in Latin America. That sounds great. And then the other company's like, yeah, well, we collected soup cans. It might make just as much of a difference, but saving 50,000 lives sounds a lot cooler than like collecting soup cans. So you might suggest that the other one, like, find some sexier like charities to invest in, basically. Either way, 2 sentences or so. Just tell me what one of the other companies should do there. Same thing with driving forces. Take a look at the 3 driving forces that you came up with, and what's the most important? Like, what's the most important of those 3, and what should one of the other company do? So, Nellie, do you remember what your driving forces are that are changing the future? Who remembers off the top of their head what the forces of change are? Come on, really, guys? That's okay. I don't remember what the Google ones were either. So if I scroll down here for the example we have, open source development, advertising networks, competition from other industries. I think I chose advertising networks, and basically, like, Google's already locked up the easy, low-hanging fruit when it comes to going out and finding people to advertise on AdWords. The way they're going to grow further is by partnering with small advertising networks and ad agencies to extend their reach to more companies and to more eyeballs, basically. So I think that's what I suggested here. Yeah, so basically, in the driving forces, it said that like both Google and Microsoft, like the trend in the industry is to buy small advertising agencies. So I thought that whichever one of them is better at buying little advertising agencies is going to be important for how the 2 are able to grow more or less aggressively. So 2 sentences there. Same thing for driving forces. Go through, look at the 5 like forces and which ones are strong, which ones are moderate. Make a suggestion for one of the other companies based on that. Market sizing, same thing. Basically, whatever product you did sizing for, the suggestion is usually, there's an opportunity to sell more in this market. I suggest that the company should pursue this market. That's what you're usually going to write for market sizing. Market positioning map, based on where the 2 companies are. Like, one of them may want to move this way or that way on the map. So your suggestion is going to basically have to do with one of the countries changing their positioning to move where their bubble is on the map. Value chain benchmarking, if we go back to Alexis's example, one of the two law firms is clearly better than the other, so your suggestion might be, firm number 2 needs to go out and recruit better so they have more talented billing staff or billable staff, something like that. And then international competitiveness, same thing. Look at the 3 areas, like things that are tailored to the local market, things that the companies learned from a non-headquarters location, and the profit sanctuaries where they make the most money, or the product segments where they make the most money, or in like Marlise's case, where they deliver what ethnic groups in the district they deliver the most value to. Pick one of those that seems most important and make a suggestion. Either the company should continue this, or they should do new things in a different direction because they're not learning enough about this area from the rest of the non-headquarters locations. And then finally, financial analysis. Once you compare all the numbers with each other, you're going to have numbers that sort of stick out, like either numbers that are way above the industry average or way below, or one of the two companies is going to have a number that's way better than the other one. And depending on what that is, you need to highlight, okay, in the case of Microsoft and Google, when I did the financial analysis, like, okay, like profit margins are nice. They're above the, like, Google's actually a little bit below the industry average for portals, and Microsoft's above the average for software. But they both got like 30% profit margins. They're both nice. And both industries have actually 0.03. So Google's way above the industry. Microsoft's only slightly above the industry. I could talk about that because here, if nothing else, what this basically says is that in general, being a search portal is not a very attractive industry. It only has a 3% return. But Google does it really, really well because they make 35% return rather than 3. So the suggestion might be like Google should continue what they're doing because they're clearly dominating the market with their profit margins. So whatever their costs are that they have to go through, their revenues are so high compared to the costs that they have a really good profit, and they need to maintain that. What actually stood out to me more was current ratio. Like this number is 4, this number is 2.6, and the averages are like 1.5 and 1.3. So basically, Google and Microsoft have a boatload of money. Both of the companies have a boatload of money sitting around in cash. So like in Globus, at the end of all the decisions where you go in and like pay down your debts, Microsoft and Google have a tremendous amount of money sitting around available to pay down debts or buy back stock or go build more manufacturing facilities or like build secretive boats like offshore that are doing secret research and God knows what. Like they have money to invest in stuff. So the thing that really stood out to me is this is a huge amount of like excess cash that they have available. They could act with that. And the suggestion I made was that the two companies need to think long and hard about what the best way is to invest that money, because having it sitting around in a bank account doing nothing is not a good use of tying up that money. Like it should be either invested in growth or like doled out as dividends to stockholders or whatever, but having that tied up in cash is not a good place to have it. Like you want to have a bit more than excess, a bit more than you need in cash, but that's too much. Like they need to do something. It's a good problem to have, but they need to do something with the money. The other averages didn't really stand out to me as important as that one, but basically you're going to go in and you're going to find some number that looks out of normal or like noteworthy, and you're going to make a suggestion about that. And again, it was just 2 sentences, maybe even 1 sentence. Yep, 1 sentence. Both firms should leverage their large amount of cash on hand. to aggressively invest in expansion of their capabilities to drive eyeballs. One sentence, done. That's all I want. 2 pages, 1 paragraph with like the punchline, the thing that stood out the most to you of all the tools, and then a suggestion, 1 or 2 sentences each for each of the tools. Make sense? Lily, any burning question that like I keep talking too much so you're not able to seem clear? Cool. That's it. I'm done. I see you guys on Wednesday. Any other questions, just come up and let me know.